Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the NAESP Principal Podcast. This is Liz Garden. I am the proud principal of the Henry P. Clough Elementary School in Mendon, Massachusetts. And I'm also lucky enough to be one of the fellows for the Center for Innovative Leadership with NAESP. And I'm especially lucky to be partnered up with my buddy who's about to introduce himself. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
Hey y'all, Scott McLeod, professor of school leadership at the University of Colorado, Denver. Um, and we're just super excited today to spend some time with Holly Clark. If you don't know Holly, she's an educational technology expert. She's also an author of multiple books, including her most recent one, The AI Infused Classroom. Holly's going to help us unpack some thinking related to artificial intelligence, or AI, in elementary and middle schools. And so we're just going to dive right in.
Yes. Go ahead. It's okay.
I'm super excited to be here and talk about AI, especially in elementary and middle school, because I think it's the place where people aren't putting enough thought and critical thought into, do we bring this into our little's classroom? How do we approach it? And I'm so excited to share some things I've seen from around the globe.
Yes. So Holly, we are so excited to have you here. And as an elementary principal and one who AI has been certainly a topic of discussion for me and several of my colleagues. So I'm excited to learn from you today. But before we kind of dive in, let's start by just having you in general introduce yourself to our NASP community. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you got to this point in your career.
Okay, so I'm Holly Clark. I live in San Diego, and I am a former middle school teacher, a former assistant head of school in elementary, a former director of technology, and I was one of the first educators in the nation to have a one-to-one classroom. I got my first one-to-one in 1999. So for about 25 years, I've been working with kids, having a device and seeing what that looks like. And so looking at AI was a natural kind of evolution for me. I've been doing it actually since 2018 and been kind of trying to warn people this is coming, but no one wanted to listen. But now that we had ChatGPT in November, people are like, what were you saying again? And so I quickly went in, and because of that ability and that early one-to-one, I quickly went in and started trying things with students that I work with. I teach in San Diego a lot. And so all of the experiences that I'm going to talk about today, I've actually done with kids and seen what works and what doesn't work.
Nice. So, Holly, generative AI, as you said, sort of hits education like a freight train a couple years ago. It's this weird tech thing that's hard for non-computer scientists to understand. But, it looks like it's doing things that only humans used to be able to do. And everybody starts freaking out about cheating and the importance of thinking and writing. And they're creating Terminator-like scenarios about technology replacing humans and, all the things. And within a very short time after that, you publish your book, The AI Infused Classroom, to try and help educators make sense of it all. So help us make sense of it all. And let's start in a general sense. What's the difference between software and AI or generative AI, et cetera? What are some general mindsets with which schools should approach AI? Let's start general.
So generative AI is a very different AI than we've been used to. So I hear people a lot of times say, oh, we've been dealing with AI for several years or for 10 years because we have spell check and we have Siri. And I often say that's your grandfather's AI. That is not generative AI. Generative AI is something that can learn on its own. And so when we first came in contact with it, I think the first thing that everyone did is ask, hey, can you write a paper for me? Can you make a haiku? And so that's the first thing we thought is kids are going to use this to cheat. And now that we've been in this almost a year and a half or almost 2 years, we know that that it's actually not. When they do studies, kids aren't using it to cheat any more than they use other things to cheat. Cheating is just something that's always happened. And we look at it like that because that's how we first interacted with it. But actually, generative AI is proving itself to be a really strong advocate for students with neurodivergence in classrooms, for kids who are ESL learners or newcomers. And so we have to reframe the conversation away from ChatGPT and that cheating model and LLMs in the classroom to things that have guardrails. Like my favorite app right now, it could change soon, but my favorite app in elementary and middle school classroom is something called School AI. And School AI allows me to set up a thought partner for my students with guardrails that kind of say, we're going to dig into maybe what you're going to do your science fair project on. And let's uncover what you're passionate about through questions. You're going to tell me, I'm going to ask, well, what parts of that do you want to do in your science fair experiment? And the AI, the School AI kind of chatbot is more like a thought partner helping kids unpack and uncover their passions rather than giving answers. And there are some AI bots right now, student facing, that just give answers. And I'm not really looking for that. I'm looking for a thought partner, something that helps motivate curiosity, that helps inspire inquiry. And what I have seen now is that is possible. And in a way I only dreamt of when I was in the classroom.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna get a little bit more into the AI weeds. And I love the thought of what you just said about the idea of, thinking of it as a thought partner. Because I think like even at the teacher-student relationship level, we, as principals, I think that's a big struggle of moving people beyond just sort of like, I'm the teacher who's doing all the thinking and all the talking and like letting the students do more of it. So now we've got these um, other teachers that are coming into our classrooms, or hopefully. So, a lot of AI tools have age restrictions, or they're targeted at older students or even adults. What are some possibilities for, our students and educators in elementary and middle school? And what are some of those interesting things that they could do or are doing?
So can I take you into a first grade classroom
I
using
would love it.
AI?
Yes.
So I had been using this chatbot School AI with fourth and fifth graders in a co-teaching situation. And a first grade teacher came to me at lunch and she said, all the kids are talking about what you're doing in fourth and fifth grade. Do you think you can bring that chatbot experience into first grade? And I have to be honest, I was a little like, I'm not okay. Like, I'm not sure, but I'm going to give this a try. That's kind of like what I've always done with ed tech has been, let's try it out. And I'm going to be there and we'll see what happens. And so she said, we're going to be learning about stars, constellations, and the sun. And can you set up a chatbot where kids can learn about that? So it was at lunchtime and I said, sure, when do you want me to come? And she said, would after lunch be okay? And I was like, I've got to do this. I've got her. You guys know this scenario. You've got a teacher who's willing to try tech. And so I'm like, I got to make this happen. So I go into School AI and they have like a little prompt box, much like anything that you would use in any AI situation. And I put in there, teach first graders about stars and constellations in the sun, keep your answers simple, and make sure that the students stay on task. And that's all I put. I walk into the classroom and we put it inside of Clever because that's what we use. And they go to Clever and they open up the star. There's a big star kind of icon for them to open. And they go in and we talk to them about AI. We don't just go in and be like, oh, use this chatbot. We talk about AI. We talk about what a chatbot is, all of the things. And then the kids put on their headphones and they go into this chatbot, which they put on their headphones because it's going to read the questions to them. They're going to be able to hear it. And then when they're ready to ask a question, they're going to use the microphone on their Chromebooks. Well, as in every situation with Chromebooks and first graders, I get in, everything seems wonderful, but the microphones aren't working. So I'm running around to all of the Chromebooks and I'm making sure that I allow the microphone. And why I do that, the kids have on their headphones and I can't really grasp whether or not they're getting this. So I get to the end and I go over to the first kid I started with and I look at what he's been doing. He's been asking this chatbot tons of questions about stars, constellations, and the sun. And I'm like, okay, this must be okay. And I look up at the teacher and I say, do you think they learned anything? She's like, I don't know. They have on their headphones. So she goes, let's bring them to the rug. So we bring them to the rug and we're like, how was this experience? And they're like, oh, I loved my body was so nice. And we're like, we let them talk about that for a second. But then she said, what's the most important? She said, what did you learn? All the hands went up. And kids started to say these things. These are 6-year-olds, by the way. I want you guys have been in classrooms with young guys like this. And one of the kids raises their hand and said, did you know that when you're on the earth, the sun looks yellow, but when you're in the atmosphere, it's white? And one of the other kids raises their hand and they're like, because of hydrogen. My bot told me about that. And I was like, well, now we're getting above my pay grade. I'm like, it is. And another kid raised their hand and said, and I'm going to repeat this wrong, but he's like, did you know the sun is 4.5 billion years old? And then another kid said, yeah, and the sun's actually a star. And when there's a bunch of stars together, it's called a constellation. And those constellations can look like things that you might notice or know of in real life. And they start going on and on and on. And I'm talking, they were with this bot for like 10 minutes. And so I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, she already taught them about this. Like, why did she have me come in if she's already taught this? And they're raising their hand and going on and on for 7 minutes. They talked about everything that they learned. Their special teachers come and she takes them away. And I say to the teacher, I'm like, did you teach this already? And she's like, no, I couldn't believe this. And so we sat there and we were like, why do you think they learn so much in 10 minutes? And she's like, it's because they got to ask questions. Instead of me telling them, here's the content about stars and constellations and the sun, they got to ask questions and they were into it. And so the kids left their little Chromebooks. I want to call them iPads, but they were Chromebooks. And I went back and I looked at a few of them. They were like, there were pages and pages and pages of this content asking questions. And a couple times I saw a kid kind of went off task and the chatbot was set up with these guardrails that said, keep them on task. I think you heard me say that. And so one of them, like they asked something about interplanetary something. And the chatbot said, I can't really answer that for you right now because we're talking about stars and constellations. Maybe we could talk about that another time. And it was just, that's everything I've wanted to see in a classroom is kids going into content through their curiosity. And I was like, I'm done here. This tool is for me. And I've tried other tools, to be honest with you, who have a student facing version. And everything that I've seen is it gives them answers. Like they might say, what's a constellation? And it'll give them 3 paragraphs about what it is. And the school AI would ask like, would say a constellation is this, and then ask them a question. And I was like, this is it. And we've used it with kindergarten for sight words. We've used it to talk to George Washington in 5th grade. We've done so many incredible things that now I think when people are talking about like ChatGPT, I'm like, that's a 2023 conversation. We're not having that conversation for elementary and middle school. That's not, I mean, you have to be 13 years old anyway. We're having a guardrail chatbot conversation. And one other thing. So in this 1st grade classroom, we had a newcomer and she was 3 days from Mexico. I live in San Diego, so we have a lot of newcomers. And that newcomer had been sitting there kind of not with a frown on her face, but staring up at the ceiling while people talk. She had no idea what was happening. So in School AI, we went and we changed her settings to Spanish, and she got to partake in that activity for the first time in 3 days. And I started crying. Like I had to turn around and I couldn't believe the smile on her face. So my excitement for what AI can do in elementary and middle school it's almost like I can't control myself. And then when I hear people talking about old conversations like ChatGPT or kids aren't safe, because School AI is one of the most safe. They use 5 verification platforms and 2 tokens, which gets a little above some people's pay grade, but it's very, very secure. So I'm kind of stuck on that tool right now because of it.
Yeah. Holly, I love that story. Thank you so much. You and I were just at the International Society for Technology and Education, or ISTE conference in Denver, along with about 18,000 other school technology nerds. And as always, there were a lot of super cool tools and technologies there. One of the dangers of going to technology conferences or talking to vendors is that we sort of stray into the, isn't this cool territory, right? So, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've seen new tools, not just generative AI, introduced with things like, look, you can write a Shakespearean sonnet in the style of Snoop Dogg about polar bears. Isn't that cool? Right? Or whatever. And yet,
Right.
we're aware that classroom teachers and students have important academic outcomes to achieve, right? So how do we help educators think about AI and getting beyond the isn't this cool part into the this is actually helpful range of activities, maybe particularly around literacy and numeracy?
So there's a lot of people who feel, and I think because I've been doing this for a year and a half, that think, okay, well, we can help teachers get into AI by giving them kind of uh like a starter kit to like go in, and maybe they can get report card comments and they can do whatever. I think that's really important, but what I think is more important than the teacher learning AI is that we quickly get AI into the hands of students so that they could see that it's a thought partner, a collaboration helper, and not a cheater. So all of those kids that I'm using this with in the elementary classroom, they're not thinking about AI helping them cheat or write a paper. They're thinking about AI helping them edit. They're thinking about AI helping them come up with an idea. And so you're right. At ISTE or any conference, I'm sure at your upcoming or the conference, which will already have happened after this podcast, but there will be lots of AI vendors, and it looks good and it sounds great. And when I've gone in and used it with kids, I went, huh, that didn't really work quite the way they thought it would. I recently used a tool with fifth graders, and they had a chatbot option. So I'm like, let me just try this chatbot option. And they did it with Abraham Lincoln, and it came back and said Abraham Lincoln owned slaves. Well, Abraham Lincoln was born in Kentucky. He moved when he was 9 months old to Illinois, which is a free state, and didn't move to Washington, D.C. Until he was president from a free state. He never owned slaves. But this AI tool told the kids that he did. And it's because it's not going through the tokens, it's not going through the verification process. Instead, this tool is building little LLMs that go and try and do things. And I honestly believe probably to save money. So you've got to try these things with kids. And when it sounds great, do something and then see if it comes back with the right answer. And I think the two areas of AI for littles and middle school, which is the love of my life. I'm a middle school teacher. I love middle school, but is I think these chatbots that support kids where they are, and instant AI feedback. I think we have to get comfortable with instant AI feedback so that kids can. That's why they cheat. They're stuck. They don't know how to write that paper. They don't want to go to the teacher and ask. So if we have this instant AI feedback that gets them unstuck, the teacher still needs to be in the loop. The teacher needs to be in charge of all of this. But for those times when I can't get to one of those 35 kids, there's an AI instant feedback that can help them get unstuck. So I just say, look at the tool with something that you know. If you're a history teacher and you know some stuff about history, ask it some questions before you give it to students.
Awesome. So like my head is spinning with all kinds of things to thinking about. Like right now, you know, clearly, I've had conversations or, tried to lead discussion with a lot of my staff about just exposing them to like, what is AI, right? And, a lot of people, not just educators, are worried, often legitimately, about, the negative aspects or impacts of AI. In fact, I'm thinking right now, I'm currently reading the book, The Anxious Generation. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
all these thoughts are spinning in my head about that piece of technology. And again, I keep going back to, I love the, like, that you're referencing of like, thought partner, collaborator, like, I think it's a matter of kind of really trying to shift people's perspective to not so much of AI as the other side of technology, where it's just simply like kids like just absorbing things from technology and social media and things like that, where versus like them being involved. But so when we think about you know, there are those negative aspects though, like, that come with everything. So what are some of them? What are some of the concerns maybe that would relate to us for schools? And, how can we mitigate some of those potentially harmful effects of using AI in a pre-K to 12 setting?
So the first thing that's going to come up there, if a parent hears that you're using AI with a first grader, they're going to assume it's ChatGPT. So you have to make sure that parents know. And for me personally, and everyone's going to have their own idea about this, but I'm not going to ask to use School AI. I'm going to show School AI to parents and let them see the experience, because otherwise they're going straight to ChatGPT, and I don't want them to think that. Also in School AI, I get a summary of every interaction the student did with that model, so I can see where I can help them, and I can now become that guide on the side in the way I always wanted to. So there's that. But there's also screen time. Are we putting more screen time? And that seems to be kind of a word that gets people right now. And for me, I think, and I think you guys know this too, but screen time is different at different ways we use it. And so screen time where kids are doing IXL and answering questions on a screen is not the kind of screen time that I'm looking for personally. I'm looking for screen time in which they are becoming budding curiosity kids, where I'm using it to help them think about inquiry, to ask questions, to be a better learner. And School AI does that. And I don't mean to keep talking about one app. It's just the one that's been the most beautiful in this age range. And so I say this to teachers. This is not this School AI is going to teach stars and constellations now. This is a yes and situation. And there's also that ability for you to have that chatbot or space up, and the kids can use it at home for when their parents can't help them. And so then it sort of then equalizes education. It democratizes education. And that's really something that's important to me. I think, and we have anxious kids, and this is on my reading list. So I've heard a lot about this book. I think we have anxious kids because we're not meeting their needs educationally as well. They're bored at school. We have a problem with attendance. We're not looking at that right now because we're trying to keep the Department of Education, quite frankly. And so we have to ask bigger things about this anxiousness as well, and not try to, and I don't think that's happening in this book or anything, but not blame screen time, but blame the way we're thinking about education in 2024. It has to look different than 1985. And right now, I couldn't tell you that it does.
Holly, obviously there's a lot going on and things are moving very quickly. I'm sure that you probably could release 5 more editions of your book since your original publication. In addition to your own book, what else would you like to share with us? What else should we be reading or talking about or thinking about or trying, in the elementary middle school space?
So I would send you to a couple books that are not education based. I would send you to Scary Smart by McLeod. I think I'm pronouncing his name wrong according to ISTE, but that's how I've been pronouncing it for a while. And McLeod looks at, this is going to be really scary, but it's also going to be quite smart. We have things like, we already know that dementia, they're talking about it a lot on the news, will probably be cured in the next 2 to 5 years. Those are some of the smart things that we should be excited about. And I like Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick. I also like by Mustafa Suleyman. I'm saying his name wrong right now, but it's The Coming Wave. And those books have been able to help me feel grounded as I look at AI. And then I wrap my pedagogical mind around it. And that's what we all have to do. And for those teachers who are scared a little bit, like, what is this going to do to original thought? I think that they haven't seen this thought partner in real life. And so when I do trainings at schools, I put them into the student kind of role, and I let them see the way that AI can be used for this feedback as this thought partner. And then we talk about, now, how do you build this? But they need to see it. They need to be a student in this new world. And then they're all convinced. Usually, and I have to tell you that it's this School AI. I don't mean to be, I'm not getting paid by them or anything. I mean, nothing. It's just School AI is something also that I find that the teachers that I train will go back and use. And that's a big win because I've done a lot of training for stuff that teachers don't often go back and use.
Awesome. Well, as a fellow bibliophile, thank you for all those book recommendations because I wrote them all down and I plan to go and read all of them. So thank you for adding to my to be read pile. But also, I think for principals to hear again what you just said about that way of helping teachers to get comfortable putting teachers in the seats of students. And so like for us as leaders, I agree, that is like the best way for any kind of professional development that we are going to, when we're going to move teachers, we're going to change their practice is like for them to live as a student, right? And so I think that what a great that's an easy takeaway that every leader can do with their staff to then hopefully have that transfer for teacher to student. So thank you. Well, we have been enjoying our time listening to Holly Clark. Again, she is the author of the AI Infused Classroom. So if you don't have that book, you need to go out and get it. And thank you so much for being with us today on the NAESP Principal Podcast. I have a feeling we might need to actually do a part 2 and come back to this because again, there's so much that we could dive into. But you have given us some great starting points for leaders across the country to really make sure that they are comfortable and able to assist teachers because this is 2024, as you said, and we have to be thinking differently about how we are educating our kiddos. So thanks for listening to NAESP Principal Podcast and tune in next time to see who we chat with on NAESP Principal Podcast.
Cool. Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.